me tell you 10 stories that made me realize something slightly terrifying. The entire course of history might be balanced on mistakes no one noticed at the time. Story 1, the driver who took the wrong street. Sometimes history turns on something as simple as bad directions. June 28, 1914, Sarajevo, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, is visiting the city for a military inspection. And now, this trip already feels tense, because Sarajevo is full of people who do not want the Austrians there. In fact, several young assassins are scattered around the city waiting for their chance. Earlier that morning, one of them throws a bomb at the Archduke's car. It explodes, but the timing is off. The Archduke survives. At this point, most people would cancel the rest of the day, but Franz Ferdinand insists on continuing the schedule. He decides to visit wounded soldiers at a nearby hospital, so the motorcade begins driving through Sarajevo again. Crowds watching, carriages moving, the city trying to look normal. And then something small happens. The driver takes a wrong turn. No one told him the route had changed. He turns down a narrow street called Franz Josef Street, realizes the mistake, stops the car, and starts backing up. Right there, on that same street, standing outside a cafe, is one of the assassins who had already given up. He thought the chance was gone. Then suddenly, the Archduke's car stops 5 feet away from him. For a moment, he just stares. Then he steps forward. 2 shots. The Archduke, his wife Sophie, both dead. Within weeks, alliances start activating, armies mobilize, empires collide, and the world descends into World War I, a conflict that will kill over 16 million people and reshape the entire 20th century. Sometimes I wonder what the world would look like today if a driver had simply stayed on the correct street, and if that moment feels unbelievable. Wait until you hear about the night a man decided not to trust a computer. Story 2, the night the computer was wrong. September 26, Cold War. The world is already nervous. Just weeks earlier, the Soviet Union shot down a civilian airliner by mistake. Tensions with the United States are sky high, and deep inside a bunker near Moscow, a man named Stanislav Petrov is monitoring an early warning missile system. His job is terrifyingly simple. If the system detects American nuclear missiles, he reports it immediately, and the Soviet Union prepares to retaliate. Then suddenly, the alarm starts screaming, the computer screen flashes, missile launch detected, and then another, and another. 5 American nuclear missiles. Now imagine you're sitting in that chair. You have seconds to decide if this is real. Millions of people could die. Protocol says he must report the attack immediately, but Petrov notices something strange. Only 5 missiles. If the United States were launching a first strike, it wouldn't be 5, it would be hundreds. He hesitates just for a moment. And then he makes a decision that goes directly against procedure. He reports the alert as a false alarm. Everyone waits. Minutes pass, nothing happens, no explosions, and no impact. Eventually, engineers discover the truth. The satellite system had malfunctioned. Sunlight reflecting off clouds had fooled the sensors, and the computer was wrong. But if Petrov had followed the rules, the Soviet Union might have launched a nuclear retaliation. History might have ended in 1983, because one man trusted his instincts more than a machine. And speaking of messages that almost changed history, the next story begins with a warning that simply never reached its destination. Story 3, the message that never reached the bridge. April 14th, 1912. The Titanic is cutting through the North Atlantic. At this point, she's already famous. The largest passenger ship ever built, luxurious, unsinkable, and racing toward New York. But that day, something else is happening across the ocean. Ships nearby begin reporting dangerous ice fields ahead. One message arrives, then another, and then another, all warning about icebergs drifting into Titanic's path. Now those warnings go to the ship's wireless room, where 2 radio operators are working nonstop, because passengers are sending personal telegrams back to Europe, and the operators are overwhelmed. Late that evening, another ship, the SS Californian, sends a final message. Ice directly ahead, very dangerous. But the Titanic operator is busy transmitting passenger messages. The Californian interrupts, and the operator snaps back. "Shut up, I'm busy." He disconnects. The warning never reaches the bridge. 2 hours later, lookouts spot something in the darkness. An iceberg. The ship turns, but it's too late. The Titanic scrapes along the ice. water floods the hull, and within 3 hours, the most famous ship in the world disappears beneath the ocean. More than 1,500 people die. And sometimes I can't stop thinking about that moment in the radio room. A tired operator, too many messages, one interruption, and a warning that never made it upstairs. And if that feels tragic, the next mistake is almost absurd because it started with a pig eating potatoes. Story 4, the pig that started a war. San Juan Island, a quiet patch of land between the United States and British Canada. The problem is, nobody's quite sure who owns it. Both countries claim it, but people are living there anyway. American farmers, British settlers working for the Hudson's Bay Company, and for a while, everyone mostly ignores the awkward situation. Until one morning, an American farmer named Lyman Cutler walks outside and sees a pig in his garden. The pig belongs to his British neighbor, and it's happily devouring his potato crop. Now imagine the frustration. Months of work, gone. Cutler grabs a rifle, shoots the pig. Problem solved, except the pig's owner demands compensation. Cutler offers $10. The British owner demands $100. The argument escalates. Authorities get involved. Then governments. Soon American soldiers arrive on the island. British warships show up in response. Suddenly, two global powers are staring each other down because of a pig. The standoff becomes known as the Pig War. Fortunately, cooler heads prevail. No one fires a shot. The island is peacefully negotiated years later, but for a brief moment, two nations nearly went to war because one pig had an appetite for potatoes. And believe it or not, the next story might be even stranger because it involves a moment of mercy that may have changed the entire 20th century. Story 5, the soldier who lowered his rifle. Northern France, the final months of World War I. The battlefield is mud, smoke, and exhaustion. British soldier Henry Tanday has already survived some of the worst fighting of the war. During one chaotic engagement, he spots a German soldier struggling across the battlefield. The man is wounded, barely able to walk. Tanday raises his rifle. The shot would be easy, but something stops him. Maybe exhaustion, maybe compassion, maybe the simple realization that the war is nearly over. He lowers the rifle, lets the soldier go. The man nods, then limps away. Years later, a strange story begins circulating. According to several accounts, that wounded soldier may have been Adolf Hitler. Even Hitler himself later claimed the story was true. Historians still debate whether it really happened, but the idea is haunting. Because if it did, then the entire course of the 20th century may have hinged on a one soldier choosing mercy instead of violence. And if that possibility makes you uneasy, the next story shows how something as small as a missing key might have saved an entire monarchy. Story 6, the key that saved a queen. London. England is deeply divided, religious tension is everywhere, and a secret conspiracy is forming. The plan is bold. Assassinate Queen Elizabeth I, replace her with a Catholic monarch, restore England to the old faith. The conspiracy becomes known as the Ridolfi Plot. Supporters across Europe are involved, messengers travel between courts, and inside England, conspirators prepare for the final move. They plan to infiltrate the palace, reach the Queen's private chambers, and strike. But at one critical moment, something goes wrong. The key needed to access a restricted area of the palace cannot be found. The delay forces the conspirators to rely on written messages instead, letters, notes, and those letters are intercepted by Elizabeth's intelligence network. The entire plot unravels, arrests follow, executions, and the Queen survives. Sometimes history doesn't change because someone makes a brilliant move. Sometimes it changes because someone simply loses the key. And if that sounds almost trivial, wait until you hear what happened when the most powerful army in Europe underestimated the weather. Story 7, the winter that destroyed an empire. Napoleon Bonaparte commands the most powerful army Europe has ever seen, over 600,000 soldiers, the Grand Armée. His plan is simple: invade Russia, win quickly, force the Tsar to surrender. But Russia is big, bigger than Napoleon expected. Russian forces retreat, burn supplies, avoid decisive battles, and the French army marches deeper and deeper into the country. Weeks turn into months. Autumn arrives, then winter. Temperatures plunge below freezing, supply lines collapse, food disappears, horses died, soldiers freeze where they stand. By the time Napoleon retreats, only a small fraction of his army survives. The campaign destroys his military power, and the empire he built begins to crumble. Sometimes the most powerful army in the world can still be defeated by something as simple as the weather. And the next story proves something even more unsettling. Sometimes the world comes within minutes of catastrophe because someone forgot to deliver a message. Story 8, the rocket that almost started nuclear war. January 1995. Scientists in Norway launch a research rocket to study the northern lights. It's harmless, completely civilian. But here's the problem. Russia had been warned in advance. The notice was sent through diplomatic channels, but somewhere in the bureaucracy. The message never reached the right military officials, so when Russian radar detects the rocket, they believe it might be a nuclear missile. The alarm spreads through the command chain. Within minutes, Russian President Boris Yeltsin activates the nuclear briefcase. For the first time in history, that the world edges toward nuclear retaliation and radar data updates. The trajectory doesn't match an attack. The object falls harmlessly into the ocean. The crisis ends. Most people on Earth never even knew it happened. But for a few terrifying minutes, a scientific rocket studying the sky. Isaac almost started World War III. And if that feels uncomfortably close to disaster. The next story reminds us that sometimes the smallest engineering mistake can bring down something enormous. Picture a telegraph operator in 1859. He's sitting in a small wooden office, wires stretching across continents, tapping messages across the world, and suddenly, the machine in front of him bursts into sparks. The paper catches fire. The wires outside glow like red-hot metal. Operators across the planet start getting electric shocks from their own equipment. Some telegraph lines keep transmitting messages even after the batteries are disconnected, because suddenly the sun itself is powering the system. Hours earlier, a massive solar eruption slammed into Earth, and if that same storm hit today, it could collapse satellites, power grids, GPS, internet infrastructure, maybe even the entire digital world we depend on, all from one cosmic mistake we barely understood. But here's the thing that really started bothering me when I first read about it. History is full of moments like that. Moments where one tiny thing changes everything. A wrong turn, a missing key, a message that never arrives. And suddenly the world goes somewhere completely different. And the more I started digging into these stories, the more obsessed I became with just how fragile history really is. What gets me about all of these stories is something slightly uncomfortable. We like to imagine history as this solid, unstoppable force. Empires rising, wars deciding the future, great leaders shaping destiny. But when you zoom in, it's often something much smaller. A scientist forgetting to send a message, a tired radio operator or a confused driver, or someone hesitating for 5 seconds longer than usual. And those 5 seconds quietly rewrite the future.